Okay, so we're now going to consider the exciting and happy possibility that life does not have any meaning. What if life has no meaning at all? Is life absurd? And the reading is by Albert Camus, who was a French existentialist philosopher. Um, he actually died quite young, tragically, in a car accident, but was a very influential French existentialist. And existentialist philosophers tended to reject the existence of God. They tended to think that God did not exist, that the problem of evil and suffering were decisive. But they also shared with theists the assumption that religion gives life meaning. And so, therefore, if you think that God is the only thing that can give life meaning, and there is no God, it follows that life is meaningless, right? It's pretty much pointless. And Camus, in particular, was really struck by the monotony of life, right? He thought that many of us get up in the morning and we brush our teeth and eat breakfast and we go to work and we do our jobs. And for many of us, our jobs really don't make a very big difference in the world. They don't change the world. I often think of politicians here, right? So we're cogs in a wheel, so to speak, and it's not always clear that the world is getting any better because of it. And so the question that he thought that people would inevitably come to ask themselves is, why keep doing it, right? Why keep engaging in these same repetitive tasks every day? Why keep getting up in the morning? And indeed, he thought the central philosophical question is, why not just commit suicide? Um, I realize this is not a very happy question to ask, and it's very provocative. And, please don't go telling your friends and family that your philosophy professor has asked you why you aren't committing suicide, because indeed I think you have many reasons not to. But this indeed was the question that Camus thought we all should wrestle with, right? Given that life is often filled with suffering, why not just commit suicide? What makes life worth living if it's just filled with these repetitive tasks? So Camus says, dying voluntarily implies that you have recognized, even instinctively, the ridiculous character of the habit of living, the insane character of daily agitation, and the uselessness of suffering. So Camus thought, he could understand why people commit suicide because, of course, if you realize the ridiculous character of living, the pointlessness of many of our daily agitations and stresses and preoccupations, and the uselessness that's in suffering, that you would at least then be taking your fate into your own hands by killing yourself, right? But now, as I mentioned, Camus was killed in a car crash, and he did not commit suicide. So he does think there's something that makes life worth living, but it's difficult to understand what, right? So he claims that life is absurd, right? What is this absurdity that he's talking about? Well, it's a feeling of alienation from one's own life. It's a recognition of the futileness of life, that there's a sense in which that nothing you do matters, that you just keep doing the same thing over and over again, and nothing's going to change. Your life just is what it is. And it's a loss of hope that anything will have change or meaning. Camus talks about this as a divorce of oneself from one's life, right? So that's the kind of absurdity that he's talking about, and he thinks that this is very much demonstrated in the myth of Sisyphus. So Sisyphus was a mythical ancient Greek character who was uh, sort of sentenced to the underworld. And because he disobeyed the gods, he was fated to roll in a really, really, really heavy rock, giant rock, up a big hill. And just as he was about to get up to the very top and get the rock up onto the top of the hill, the rock falls and rolls back down. And so Sisyphus goes back down to the bottom of the hill and rolls the rock up the hill again and again. As he struggles and struggles, just as it gets to the very top, it just rolls right back down the hill. And so Sisyphus is fated to spend all eternity struggling and toiling to roll this rock up this hill, knowing that as soon as he gets close to the top, it's just going to roll back down again. And this is what, Camus thinks our lives are like, right? That we're fated to struggle and struggle hard each day to accomplish a task, a rather meaningful task, that we're going to fail to accomplish. And it seems so dismal and depressing, right? So the question is, can Sisyphus be happy? He has no hope of succeeding. He knows he's being punished by the gods. He knows they're not going to let him get the rock up the hill, right? He knows it has no purpose. And yet, he finds himself continuing to go back down and try again, right? And so, can Sisyphus be happy? So Camus states that happiness and the absurd are two sons of the same earth. They're inseparable. And that even though that Sisyphus knows his action is pointless and that he's not going to succeed, he claims that Sisyphus also retains knowledge that he is the master of his days. That is, he's the one that's going to go ahead and keep trying, rolling the rock up the hill. That's his task, right? Even though he knows it won't succeed. So he accepts his fate and continues to push the rock. And in that, he has power. In that, he has power in his decision to continue to push the rock up the hill. And so that knowing that and accepting that is somehow liberating for Camus. It's a source of happiness. Now, of course, what I want to push you to think about is this really enough, right? I mean, this seems so depressing. Can there be happiness even when you know that you cannot change your circumstances? Can there be happiness even if you keep doing the same repetitive tasks over and over again? I mean, many of us get up, again, we brush our teeth, we go to work, and we're tired and we're exhausted when we come home, and yet we keep doing it. And yes, we need to go to work to have money and to survive, but is that enough to make life worth living? So I'm going to next have you watch a film that's assigned for this week, the film Groundhog's Day, which is about a weatherman who goes to Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania in order to cover Groundhog Day. He's a very conceited and arrogant, shallow guy, played by Bill Murray. His name is Phil. And but he finds himself in a situation where he's trapped, reliving the same day over and over and over again. So watch the film. You can either rent the film and watch it entirely, or you can watch the slightly edited version of the film. It's still about an hour long from the link in the module. And there's a discussion question activity. So watch the film. Clearly, this is something like the myth of Sisyphus with a slightly 90s version twist and think about whether or not it's possible to have a good life, whether it's possible to be happy, even when you know that you're just going to be doing the same thing over and over and over again.